Pima County, Tucson is working on, and then also they've got a great bicyclist education program that Matt's going to talk about as well. It's probably one of the best programs in the country. So, take it away, Matt.
Is this on? Yeah, you can hear it. Thank you very much, Bob, and it's really fabulous to be here today with all the professionals and advocates and professional advocates, Damien, the most professional advocate of all. So really tremendous group here, and just a quick background. I originally got into cycling back in the 80s with the Hawaii Bicycling League, and so I was an advocate, moved to the Tucson region, and worked as a transportation professional and did advocacy at the same time. And then back in 2000, referring to Steve Farley's presentation, I drafted the 3-foot passing law. And I'll tell you, talk about a sausage process, sausage making. I wasn't so involved in trying to get it through the legislature, but there were some key Phoenix people and people from all around the state, including a Navajo, or actually, I think she was Tohono legislator who helped us get it passed. In the process, though, it got amended, and some of you folks may have seen the amendments and not agree with them. So we came to a point, you heard about the difficulties that Steve has faced throughout the years, but we came to a point where it was either do or die, you know, just go ahead with the amended bill or just let it die. And so I'm actually happy that we went ahead with it because, as Steve described, ever since probably the early 2000s, anything to promote bicycle safety, pedestrian safety, has been really, really stymied. So even though it's an imperfect law, it was the second one, I think, in the country. I think Wisconsin was just ahead of us. And so at least got the conversation going, and hopefully over time we could possibly see that law fixed, where it's a little bit better for us. So with that, I'd like to jump into my presentation, and real quick, it's easier for me to say, who has not heard of the Loop? Raise your hand. Oh good, we've got a couple people, awesome. All right, because otherwise I didn't want to bore the rest of you. But I think we're running a little bit behind time, it looks like, in the schedule, so I'll try to go through this as quickly as possible so that we can get back on schedule. So a little bit of a Jeopardy game here. So here's the answer, about 1.5 years. Who can tell me the question, and don't tell me it's how long you would take to cycle the loop to get around it. It doesn't count. Damien.
When will the loop be done, Matt?
Okay, Damien. How long will it complete the loop? So Damien has won one of our fun middle school safety stickers, reflective safety stickers, and it's a Girl Rider's Rule. Right on, Damien. Don't forget that. Damien's such a fabulous supporter in the Tucson region and throughout the state, and works a lot with El Grupo kids, so he knows that girl riders really do rule. So what is it? So it's approximately a 54-mile main loop pathway system that we're developing. In total, it'll add up to around 130, 131 miles. We're roughly at about 110 to 115 miles complete. It's a moving target. It's being built very quickly. In fact, about 8 years ago, I think we only had 15 miles of the loop in place. And it really wasn't a strong concept at that time, but it quickly became one. So you can see the main loop itself, kind of a parallelogram. It involves the Rito River, the Pantano Wash on the east side, the Harrison Greenway on the east side, which goes through state lands. Damien was talking about state land issues. And then at the south and southeast part of the Tucson region, we have the Julian Wash, which I didn't even really know existed until we started working on the loop. And then we have the Santa Cruz pathway, which goes kind of north-south. And as part of that, we have extensions that go to the south as well as to the north. We're trying to get even further up into Marana over the next year. And then we have the CDO pathway, which is a really fantastic pathway now. It connects up to Catalina State Park. And some of our middle school education program students have done overnight camping trips up there as part of our middle school program. So basically, our Cadillac is the divided urban pathway where we have a paved path, an unpaved path, some nice landscape if possible. But this takes about 75 to 100 feet of right-of-way, so a lot of the loop is much tighter than that. So we can't quite get this Cadillac. And so then we have to really work on promoting sharing the path, because it's beginning to get so popular, we're having quite the growing pains to get pedestrians, cyclists, and equestrians to share the path a little bit better. So just a few shots here to give some flavor. This is kind of our ideal cross-section if possible. And then going to the development of the loop, it was kind of a situation where it takes a significant number of people or a number of significant people to come together. So on the lower right, we have Roy Schoonover, who is a tremendous advocate, citizen advocate, who really promoted the loop along with Bill Adamson here today and JP and a number of other really committed folks. And then we got Chuck Huckleberry, our county administrator, on a bike. And what was pretty neat is a gentleman right to his right with the mustache. He and I used to work together in transportation consulting. He finally got Chuck to go out with him, and I had gotten the first fellow into riding. So Chuck shows up, laughs at my friend's tight, cycling shorts. They go for a 30-mile ride, and Chuck was in cut-off jeans. So what do you think he said afterwards? He said, "Where did you get those shorts?" So ever since then, we can't get the guy off a bike, including when projects are under construction. We'll get memos, on Monday morning after he's gone out and reviewed our projects. So just a little more flavor. This is a Pantana Wash pathway, a section of it on the east side. This one, a lot of people have difficulty figuring out where it is because it's so green. It's actually on the Santa Cruz. Very nice section right in the urban area. And then just some, additional locations, Arito, wherever possible, trying to get underpasses as part of the loop. We do have sections of the loop where, because of our growing pains, our county administrator said, I want to see the pathway developed to 16 feet wide, which starts to feel and look like a roadway. But in some places, because of the amount of use, that extra space actually can be quite helpful, especially if we can get some nice shade landscape and other features to make it a little more feel like a pathway rather than a roadway. This is a section of the Julian Wash. This is a 16-foot wide section, and you get really varying views and ecosystem and everything as you go throughout the loop. It's pretty fantastic what you can see. Again, just an underpass. And then, as part of our education program, and I'll talk about this in the next slideshow, is we're trying to focus on low-income areas in particular and schools near or immediately adjacent to the loop, because that's one of the best opportunities to be able to get youth out and active and more comfortable in bicycling. And one thing we run into, this is Ignacio Rivera de Rosales, our main safety educator, is probably about 3 to 5% of the kids have never learned to bike. And that goes through adult years as well. So with our Bike Buddy program, we're even teaching adults. Donna Lewandowski, one of the folks here today, has taught a number of adults how to bike who never learned, which is really fantastic. So just a few more shots. These are our middle school kids getting out on the loop. And here's another quick Jeopardy answer, about 2 years. Anybody have a guess on this one? This one's a little trickier. Come on, doesn't anybody want another safety sticker? Especially this one. This is our pass gas safety sticker. Shows a bicyclist passing a gas pump. So really, as we build the loop, sections of it get closed down. So unfortunately, right now we have some sections of the Santa Cruz at Ina Road, the Santa Cruz at Ajo, or Ajo Way, and the Pantano at Kolb that are getting shut down while roadway projects are being built, new projects, or the roadways being widened. We're doing whatever we can to try to find detours and ways to get folks through here. But this is one of the ongoing challenges that I think we'll see for quite some time. So just real quickly to give you some perspective, Vina Road is kind of up in the northern part where the CDO pathway and the Rito and the Santa Cruz all come together, just to the north of there. To the east, the city of Tucson is extending Sabino Canyon Road to Cole, and that's the section on the Pantano that will be getting shut down for a while. Although the city has detoured the path to the west side of the wash, so currently people can get through while that bridge is under construction. And then the Santa Cruz down at Ajo Way, which is more on the southern section of the loop. So why build it? You know, why should we go through all this effort and expense? It's quite an endeavor. One of the major reasons is it's good for Tucson and the Pima County economy. Some years ago, I served as a peer reviewer on a study in Kitty Hawk, of all places, where they looked at the people who come to Kitty Hawk who may go there in large part to cycle. And so they did a big study there, which is really good, and they found over a 9-to-1 return on what they had spent on cycling facilities versus the economic gain they were getting from people who had come there to cycle. So they realized very quickly in the Kitty Hawk area, because I think it was around 20% of the public was going there to cycle, that if they invested a little bit more in their cycling facilities there, they would see that much more gain. So we've found a similar level of benefit, about a 9.4-to-1 return, looking at just these areas: mobility, tourism, housing value, health savings, and business activity. There are various other things you could look at, of course, such as safety. That's a pretty critical factor to look at. So studies have shown anywhere from about a 9-to-1 return to over a 30-to-1 return when you develop pathway systems like this. And then there's a national cycling survey that was done, a woman's cycling survey. What would cause you to start cycling or to increase your cycling and the distance that you cycle? So the response is, not too surprisingly, more bike lanes, but for us, especially with the loop, to help support our endeavor, completely separated off-road cycling paths. And for the most part, the loop is completely separated. We do have a few sections that are on-street, double-striped bike lanes or local streets, but for the most part, we're on off-road cycling paths. And then we did a local facility survey, talking with folks throughout the region at various locations. We tried to get a good cross-section. And again, we found a very similar result: top requests in order, shared use pathways being number one, and then enhanced bike lanes with like a 2-foot stripe buffer, colored buffer of some sort. We've also done counts. Actually, these numbers are a little bit old. The Rito at Mountain Avenue, about 3,400 people on a Saturday using the loop, which is really quite encouraging. And these counts are from 5 years ago. We're actually scheduling some counts in April again to see what our changes may be. And about 750,000 loop users annually. That's a tough figure to figure out, but we tried to look at it in various ways and came out with that number. So a few more shots here of some of our newer sections. This is the CDO going under I-10. Many barriers that we have to deal with, arterials, crossing the wash itself, getting under the interstate, getting under the railroad. Quite a lot of challenges, but I'll tell you, we've got a tremendous team of folks working on this in many departments. This is the same pathway heading towards the Catalina Mountains, going under Thornydale Road, heading north again. Here's one of those barriers, you know, getting across the wash itself. And then this is up at Oracle Highway. This is where the CDO pathway goes under Oracle to get to Catalina State Park. This project has come together very quickly over the last year. It's been a tremendous project. This is the newest section of it between La Cañada and La Cholla. And we have this about 98% complete. The pathway's in place. People have been using it for a month and a half or so, but there's a Hawk pedestrian hybrid beacon that we're going to install at a roadway, so that's in the process of development right now. This is looking into Catalina State Park under Oracle Highway there. So the other major barrier that we encounter are existing old sections that were in place, like that 10 to 15 miles that were in place in the 80s up until about 2008. This is just a before-after, where we know we have to get in and widen these old underpasses. And hopefully over time we'll widen some of the old kind of trestle-style bridges that were built at 8 feet wide and get more space for people. But in the meantime, we also are doing safety outreach to try to encourage people to, as I mentioned, be as safe as possible. This is a section of the Harrison Greenway on the east side. This actually goes through and adjacent to Fantasy Island, which is a great urban mountain bike park. Really fun place if you ever get a chance to get down there. So this is a great opportunity for us to work with Davis-Monthan, the city of Tucson, and state lands to be able to get a 50-foot wide easement to develop a 12-foot wide pathway, which connects to the Rita Ranch area, kind of one of those far-flung developments in the city that had little to poor bicycle access into the city itself. And so now we have this really great pathway that connects them. And this is in the Rita Ranch area. We couldn't develop a pathway through here at this time. We hope to perhaps down the road. But at the interim, we looked at those survey results, the requests that people had for things such as buffered bike lanes, or in this case, a double-striped bike lane, which actually has a very, very good safety record. Looking at the same facility in a different direction, we also, the city of Tucson has sidewalks in both directions on the roadways, so that's really helpful. This is about a mile and a quarter that's on street. And then throughout the loop, wherever possible, we try to put in artwork. This is called our Batty Biker. And we have some great bat bridges that basically roadway bridges where bats are roosting. People can get out and watch the evening flow of the bats. And so this is one of the bridges. In fact, I took my son here when he was about 9 years old. Got lots of bat guano on our heads while we were waiting for the bats to come out. So it's really a spectacular sight to see. And then this is the Sun Circle, which is on the Rito, and actually has been in place for quite some time. Tremendous public artists in the Tucson region collaborated on this project, so it's kind of a favorite. And what's really neat is you get on the loop, and this is virtually, I wouldn't say in the center of the city, but just to the south of the center. And can you see any of the city there? So there are sections on the loop where you get some really beautiful views. Throughout the region. This is the Kino Environmental Restoration Project, we call it, detention basin. And this connects on the new pathway we developed to tie in with the city's aviation golf links pathway that goes right through kind of central Tucson. Just a few shots showing some construction activities. This is our newest section that I think is officially complete as of today. It's the east side on the Pantano. Donna Lewandowski and I wrote a grant application for this to connect. It's just a short half mile from Speedway, or actually 5th Street towards Broadway, but it's a key connector that now gives us about, I think, 12 to 15 miles of loop just in that east side. So it's a really important project. Just to mention about the funding sources, federal transportation enhancements have been a tremendous source for us. Parks funds, the Regional Transportation Authority, which is a half-cent sales tax dedicated to transportation in the Pima County region. Flood Control District, they have pulled in a lot of funding for this and worked really hard developing a lot of these pathways. And then what we call projects of opportunity. For instance, wastewater was doing a major project and we said, hey, can we pave on top of that wastewater line? And they're like, sure thing, we'll get a public easement for it. So a lot of great funding sources and opportunities that have come together. This is just a before-after, actually, a Photoshop. This was how we present our project, especially when we were pursuing transportation enhancements. This is a project that's just been completed officially today on the Pantano. And then another shot, the same project, and this bridge was the picture of the bridge sections that were being put in place. This was a Photoshop when we put together the proposal. And this is kind of what's going to be our mountain on the Rito. It'll be about 16 feet above the roadway with about a 6-foot substructure. So it'll be about a 20-foot climb for those people who otherwise are riding a fairly flat pathway. So we'll provide some challenges to folks. This should actually go to construction this summertime. We're really looking forward to this one. And then, as I mentioned, kind of the growing pains, a number of our activities, and we're experimenting, we're trying things, is to get out and really talk with people. Donna and many folks have been involved with our Bike Ambassador program, meeting with folks, providing free loop maps, doing all sorts of things. And one thing I thought, well, heck, why don't we just try giving away free bells? And I thought it would absolutely have no effect whatsoever. But in 1 year, the first year, we gave out over 2,000 bells, and the complaints plummeted. I don't know if there's any correlation or not, but you know, the more we can encourage people to just be aware of each other, slow down, share the space, the better. The lower picture on the left here, the ring bell or say passing, this was inspired by a sign I saw in Australia in Brisbane a year and a half ago. And so we developed an adaptation of that. And you know, many of us as cyclists have kind of, you know, gotten into the sport and always been told, you know, say on your left. But we know what could potentially happen if you say that to a pedestrian, you know, who's walking ahead with earbuds half in and out of their head. They may step left. And there have actually been a couple of serious injuries in the Tucson region. It occurred exactly that way. And so we've been encouraging people to, you know, slow down, ring a bell, say passing, say good morning, say good afternoon, something like that. And then try to encourage pedestrians, because we get a lot of complaints or, you know, concerns about pedestrians kind of filling up the pathway. That was one of my concerns about developing a 16-foot wide pathway. It's kind of like the bigger the backpack you get, the more junk you put in it. So we were a little worried that people would start, you know, walking 4 abreast across the 16-foot wide pathway. And to an extent, that does occur, 3 to 4 abreast, but you still got another 8 feet on the other side. Hopefully you can pass. So as part of this, we have kind of promoted our own Burma Shave campaign. Anybody here old enough? Yes. You don't have to admit. Oh, okay, you admitted. I'm not quite old enough. I didn't see these, or I didn't, you know, cognitively process them when I was 5 years old. But so we developed a few different messages ourselves. Walking the dog on a leash too long will lasso a bike, and both will be gone. Keep Fido close. Watch for horses when taking a spin. If there's a conflict, the horses win. So we've got about a dozen of these messages, and we take them out on portable signs. We don't want to leave, you know, we don't want to do too much sign pollution out there. And we get some really good comments as a whole. I'd say 99% of the comments are positive about this safety outreach campaign. So just a last, I think this is my last slide on the loop. Just a quick mention about our construction folks, our contractors, our engineers, planners, and especially our maintenance people. You know, the #1 complaint usually from cyclists is maintenance. And so I really have to give a shout out to all these folks who do the actual work, who really try to keep the pathways in good shape and build good pathways. So with that, that's all I have on the loop right now. There are some maps in the back. Actually, kind of good news, bad news. This is a fun little funky Z-fold map, it's called. I ordered 35,000 of these in November, and I'm now down to my last 100. So they really go fast. In fact, I'm putting another order for 20,000 here in about a week. So there are just a few in the back there. But if you want copies of the map, including for distribution for your purposes, just contact me. and I can get you copies of those. So any questions? Yes, sir.
On one of the signs, I noticed looked like the name of a running store. Is that a public-private partnership as part of some of those signs?
Awesome. Thank you very much for asking that. Absolutely. So Fleet Feet is a running store in Tucson. It has, I think, a couple locations, maybe 3. And they got a special grant through their sort of national headquarters to help with pathway safety. It's about a $1,000 grant or so. And so we teamed up with them on some outreach tables, like the Burma Shave campaign that I mentioned there. And then they offered to help with minor infrastructure costs. So basically, we have a program right now where for about $75, they can get a sign. We'll pay for installation. We will pay for the signposts and such, and we'll pay for maintenance. And we find places to put these signs up. So right now, Fleet Feet purchased 10 signs. We've put them out on the Rito. GABA, the Greater Arizona Bicycling Association, has approved purchasing 10 signs, which is really nice, really helpful. And then Perimeter Bicycling has also offered to purchase some signs as well. So the juggle for me, though, is that, especially our older sections of the loop, for instance, the Rito between roughly La Cañada and Craycroft, there are about 42 signs per mile already in place on each side of the wash. So, but many of the signs are old, they're worn out, they're hardly legible, they're the wrong signs, they're unnecessary. So I have to kind of work with our Parks and Recreation group to make sure that, you know, if I bring in new signs like this, or wayfinding, safety signs, guidance, etc., that we balance it out, that we don't over-sign the pathway. But yeah, thanks for asking. Yes, sir.
You had some numbers on utilization. Do you have the relative numbers between cyclists, pedestrians, equestrians, different user types?
Yeah, actually we do. And it varies a lot per section. So like in the Rito area itself, when we've done counts there, it was roughly 50-50 between pedestrians and cyclists. That 3,400 number that I had for Rito and Mountain, I think we had a total of 8 horses. Now of those 8, I think 6 of them were down in the wash, and then the rest were up above. But we encourage people to understand that equestrians can use the pathway, and here's the techniques. You know, if you encounter an equestrian, especially coming up from behind, you know, slow down dramatically, you know, stop if necessary, and then ask the rider if it's okay to proceed. Because even if they are using the wash, they're typically coming in from above, they have to walk a ways and then go down a ramp to get into the wash. So. Yes?
Here's my direct question. Do you have any reported interaction unsafe interaction between bicycles and pedestrians on some of the part of the loop?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Which part of the loop and why is that?
Great question. So it's typically, it's almost universally on the Rito in the older sections that have some underpasses and trestle bridges that are 8 feet wide. But even aside from that, the pathway still varies from about 8 feet to 12 feet, and in some places 16 feet. So we haven't quite pinpointed or looked closely at where the complaints are coming from. In fact, a lot of times we'll get a complaint, but they don't tell us where they actually are. And so, you know, they will tell us it's on the Rito. Well, where on the Rito? You know, should we do safety outreach right there, or try to target funding for either safety signs and or hopefully over time capital funds to widen those sections? So what I've suggested to bicyclists is that, you know, we're all enjoying ourselves riding the bike out there, and yeah, pedestrians will do things, but we kind of just let it go past us once we get past the pedestrians. So we don't hear from cyclists that much about concerns they have with pedestrians. It's usually, you know, there's sand on the path here, or there's a crack here, or this turn's too sharp, but not about pedestrians. But from pedestrians, we sure hear about the bicyclists. So we have to be, you know, proactive as much as possible, but also reactive. So now I'm starting to hear from the cyclists. You know, I've told them, hey, if you guys don't want to see major clampdowns of some sort, you really need to notify us of your concerns as well. So we're coming up with a special like bookmark or brochure, something we hope will be kind of interesting, nice, funky, and maybe when we do the outreach now, especially along the Rito, we'll stand people on both sides of the path and just, you know, ask people if they'll take this bookmark or reflective thing, whatever it's going to be, and hopefully they'll look at it and think about it and maybe try to incorporate it in their pathway activities. For instance, in Atlanta, they started a campaign called Don't Clothesline on the Beltline. And that had to do with retractable leashes. So they were trying to encourage pedestrians, you know, to keep control of their animals and keep them tight. So. Okay, 10 minutes? Okay, so I'm going to move on, I think. Bob, should I just move right into the next?
Yep.
Okay, so I've got just 10 minutes, so I got to zip real quick, but I can take questions afterwards. So I mentioned coming from Hawaii, I was involved with the Hawaii Bike League. So when I got to Tucson, I thought, I hope someday we can get a program going like this in Tucson. Then I got hired in 2002, and we pursued safety grants. Donna Lewandowski helped us a tremendous amount as an intern, and later we hired her as our Safe Routes to School coordinator. So we have a lot of really good partners in the region, including with pedestrian and ADA advocacy, GABA, PBAA, and a number of others. And we were the first regional gold award in the nation, which was quite fun. This is the mayor of Tucson at the time, Bob Walkup. He came up to me one day in an elevator and he said, hey, I'd like to get back into biking. What can I do? And I said, well, talk to your transportation director. He rides a bike, and then maybe come take one of our Road 1 classes at the time, now Traffic Skills 101. And Bob came and took a class with me. What was funny though, we got going, and about 3 miles into the ride, he came up to me and he goes, wow, this is fantastic. You know, I haven't been on a bike in 50 years. And I was like, wow, I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad you're safe. You haven't crashed so far. So he actually was quite, kind of like our county administrator, a great advocate for improving bicycling throughout the region. So we went after this grant for the Safe Routes program in particular, with pedestrian safety for second graders, bike safety for fourth graders, and then trying to get really strong local champions at the schools, PTAs, teachers, PE teachers, etc. We go out with a truck and trailer. Ignacio takes a team of our bike ambassadors out. He's reaching about 35 schools per year. And then we have summer camps, after-school programs, all sorts of things. And that's just the elementary school. And then we have a middle school program as well. This is a Junior L Tour, mainly focused on underprivileged kids. We partner with PBAA and the Zuckerman Foundation and others to support these kids getting into a training program. And then at the end of the training program, they get free bikes. They get to actually keep the bikes. We provide helmets and trainers and water bottles and a variety of safety stuff. And then working with Ignacio and Daniela, a group of youth summer bike camps with about 120 kids going through those camps, a lot of underprivileged kids as well, and many kids who haven't learned to bike. These kids are focused on a little younger ages, between I think about 9 and 12 is kind of their focal area. And then various events, supporting International Walk and Bike to School Day, and then Walk and Roll to School Day is a project we started a while back, and we've gone from about 300 kids to over 53,000 kids participating. And with our middle school program, we put out a request for proposals. Perimeter Bicycling actually was selected as a consultant. And so what we do is go out to these middle schools, and especially working with their PE teachers or some key advocate there, we take in bikes that actually we dedicate to the schools, about 20 to 30 bikes at each school. I think we're up to around 200 bikes now spread out over different schools. And we're actively reaching out to elementary and middle schools now with this sort of team bike concept. They get to keep the bikes, but we actually are the ones who still retain ownership, especially if the school may close or they may move or something, they decide not to continue the program. We get the bikes back, the tools, the repair stands, everything, and then we try to get that to a new school. Our original middle school program was a $500,000 enhancement grant, but we actually got the ARA funds, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, and kicked it up to about $800,000, but with a lot less time to spend it. So ultimately we spent about $500,000 as it turned out. And then with our ambassador program, we have a lot of activities with safety classes. I've got class schedules and a variety of things in the back table you can take a look at. A bike buddy program I think I mentioned. And partnering with the Pima County Library System, a book bike program, which is really fun. 3 book bikes now with Pima County Library that go out to give free bikes books to kids. And then Books on Wheels, where we actually have our ambassadors go into or visit with an elderly person or a disabled person who can't get to the library and deliver books to them. With our classes, we have a lot of incentives for people to take the classes, free helmets, light sets, U-locks, etc. And these are good quality products. And then really excellent teachers involved in going through these programs. Just a few more slides here. So by far our biggest issue in the Tucson region, and perhaps nationwide based on some studies done in the past, is people riding against traffic, whether in the street or on the sidewalk or in the dirt. Roughly a 6 times higher crash risk. It's actually much higher for children and lower for adults, but it's still a very significant crash risk. So besides the education and outreach, we work with enforcement to say, hey, can you concentrate on this? Get people into a bike diversion program that we started that's now run by PAG, and get out a few signs and markings out there to reinforce, that folks should ride with traffic, including some advertising at bus stops and other ways to try to get the message across. So a few more things here. The bike diversion program I mentioned started about 6-7 years ago, and now is with PAG. Looking at those key infractions, especially with the wrong way riding, but some of the other issues as well. It's really easy though for police to stake out a local street intersection with a 2-way or 4-way stop, and we all know which one it is in Tucson, and sit there and bust people for rolling that stop, even though there may not be one documented crash there in the previous 10 years. So, we work with enforcement to try to say, hey, where are people actually getting injured? What are the issues here? Can you focus on those areas much more so if possible? We run a bike station for the U of A, very popular. We have a lot of people going through this program. We provide minor flat repair. We register bikes. Sometimes U of A gets extra funding to provide bike bells or locks. So we're working with students and others. It's not restricted to students. And not as exciting as ASU's various activities and stations going on, but still this is a really good service with our bike ambassadors. These are just some stats about the bike station, reaching about, I think it's about 10,000, not 9,000 various fixes and registration and flat repairs and all that. So that's 9,000 per school year. And then our enforcement folks, great partners, as I mentioned. So the more we can coordinate with them, the better. So sorry I'm running over time. Bob, I don't know if there's time for a few questions.
We need to kind of move along.
I'll let you take over. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay, Ken St. John.
Hi.